Okay, first of all, thank you for joining me. Thank you so much for joining me. As I always say, it's never been true when it comes to these classes, because having you here changes everything. It changes everything. Beginning Poshet with the discipline to start a class and finish it and not take a break in the middle to get coffee, which you can't do on Sukkot anyway. First of all, today is the fourth day of Chol Hamoed. Sukkot today is Chof Tishrei Hey Tov Pei Vav. And this is a second introductory class to what's going to be a series of classes on the Yud Beis Psukim or Imorei Chazal. I want to say this right now. The Shir is Zchus for Baruch Halevi ben Rachel, Zchus Yonit Bas Manuela, V'chol Yitzchak Alteim, for all good things, beginning with health and seichel, and children and grandchildren and nachas, and then lots and lots of parnasa, and all the things that parnasa can buy. And it should be, like the Rebbe always says, wealth is not determined in how much you have, but on what you spend it. You should spend it on positive things, so then you're rich. If you spend it chas v'shalom on medical expenditures and pains in the neck, then it's not such wealth. They wish to mention Ashirus, and the Ashirus again of Ashirus Metanala, for all the most wonderful and positive things. This is a commitment we made, that during this year, Tov Pei Vav, we should give a series of classes on the 12 Psukim, Beis Psukim or Imorei Chazal, which the Rebbe introduced, the Chodesh Iyar, Tov Lamed Vav, the beginning of year 1976, and then completed doing that on Lag BaOmer. First, the Rebbe gave 6 Psukim Imorei Chazal, 2 from Tanakh, 2 from Chazal, 2 from Tanya, and then 3 weeks later on Lag BaOmer he did it again. 2 from Psukim, 2 from Tanakh, 2 from Chazal, and 2 from Tanya, for a total of 12 passages, which are encompassing the whole Torah, as we're going to be discussing momentarily. Now, we had a class last week, the first day Chol Hamoed, which was Thursday. Right? Thursday before the Farbrengen. I gave a shir. And 2 ideas came out at us. The class was over an hour. It was a long class. 2 ideas came out at us as we learned about the Rebbe Sicha on Yud Beis Psukim from Chodesh Iyar. The first is why the Rebbe made it. He quoted the pasuk Mipi Eilim v'Enkim Yitzada Te'ez L'Hash B'Seiv V'Masnakim, that children have a special power to defeat the enemies of the Jewish people, both the enemy who's overtly your enemy, who tells you I hate you, and the enemy that's covert, who smiles at you when he's your friend and he's really your enemy. And children have the power to defeat both of those enemies, because as the Gemara says, children have no sin, and the air, the Torah, the tefillah, the mitzvahs that come from their mouths is pure, and therefore is far more effective than that of adults. And for this reason, children have a special koyach to defeat all kinds of enemies. The beginning of this story is Yud Beis Tammuz, that in Tafresh Pei Zayin, that this year is going to be 99 years. This coming year is going to be 99 years since the Rebbe said the Maimer, V'kibel HaYehud in Tafresh Pei Zayin, and he spoke about Mordechai and the children and the 3 psukim, Al Tira, Utzoetza, and Va'adzikna. And in that Maimer, the Rebbe spoke about the Mesiras Nefesh, and specifically the Mesiras Nefesh to teach children Torah, and the power that the Torah of children has to defeat the enemy, to be mevatel the gezerah. This became a watershed. It became a foundational attitude from the Rabbeim, that when you need to find a weapon to defeat a Helen Vehester, a challenge that the Jewish people face, the Rabbeim have 101 different tools, but one of the tools that the Rabbeim use is, as they say in American, from the mouths of babes, the power of little children. The Rebbe invoked this in the summer before the Yom Kippur War, the summer of 1973. I was then an 7-year-old. And I remember the tumult around children at that time. The Rebbe made rallies, the Rebbe gave us wine. Now it's 2.5 years later, now it's 1976. And the Rebbe is using the same invocation, he's using the same idea, that children have a koyach to defeat enemies. Now I must say that right now the Jewish people find us in a very funny position. Everyone is celebrating the exchange of the hostages for thousands of murderers. Somehow to me this doesn't sound like of victory for the Jewish people. It's saving Jewish lives. But it's not enough that Jewish lives are saved. Jews have to win. And our enemies have to lose. Not because we love to defeat enemies, because if we don't defeat the enemy is going to win in its own mind, which means tomorrow you're going to have to fight again. And there comes the same old thing, ceasefire means get ready for the next war. And sooner or later we have to finish. We have to finish. And perhaps it's b'hashgacha that we're learning these siches about children and the Yud Beis Psukim, Marach Hazal, at this point, even though it's not the right time of year. The Yud Beis Psukim were introduced in preparations for Lag B'Omer. Because you need the koyach of children to defeat all kinds of enemies. So that was the first idea. The first idea that the Rebbe said is why he's introducing the Yud Beis Psukim, because of the power of little children. But then comes the far more interesting idea, which is far more original, is what he wants to do with it. He wants to do many things with it, but one of the things that Rebbe wanted to do it was to empower children to be mashpiyim, to empower children to go on mivtzoyim. Children should not just be takers, they should be givers. And as I explained to you in the last class, in my own opinion, this goes back to the story of the Rebbe Rashab, who cried when he was 4 or 5 years old. How come Hashem does not reveal himself to me if he revealed himself to Avraham Avinu? And the Rebbe said, this is a story of a Rebbe, of a tzaddik. We don't need to know the story of a Rebbe, of a tzaddik, because it has no relevance to us. So why were we told the story about the Rebbe Rashab as a 4-year-old, as a 5-year-old? It's not on our level. And the Rebbe said the fact that the story was told to us is proof that it is on our level. And the Rebbe was machadish that children today are not like children before. In earlier times, children had to be bribed. Whatever a child did had to be for a reward. Shalei lishma. You could not expect a child to do something just for the sake of the Eibishter. There needed to be an ulterior motivation. And which is called Shalei lishma. You're giving him a toy, you're giving him a cookie, you're giving him money, you're giving him flattery. And only when the child grows up can he do things just for the sake of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yasek Adam B'Teir B'Mitzvah Lishma. So the Rebbe says children today are on a different level than the children in times of the Rambam. Today, children can be so sincere that a child should cry, every child, not just the Rebbe Rashab, that he wants to see the Meibish. So it's in that spirit that the Rebbe is saying children are not just people that you can rear. Children are people who can rear others. Children can be mechanech other children. And he mentioned the fact that children are very precocious, they're very social, they're very friendly, they make friends easily. And he also mentioned the fact that children have a tendency to be competitive. If I have something that you don't have, then I'm better than you. And the Rebbe said when you combine these two characteristics, the social nature of children and the competitive nature of children, children can be motivated using these two tools, plus the sincerity I spoke about a minute before, that children should be mashpia in other children. That children go on mivtzoyim with children of their own age and say, I know something that you don't know, I'd like you to know it. And that child will come to you tomorrow and say, I know something you don't know, I want you to know it. So the Rebbe's idea is this, listen to this. If children are going to be mashpiyim, and children are going to be motivated to tell other children something that they don't know and create this positive competitiveness of knowing more psukim and more Midrash Chazal, you need to give them material. You have to give them what to be mashpiyah. And that's why the Rebbe made Yud Beis Psukim. The Rebbe introduced Yud Beis Psukim because he wanted to give children sound bites, basically, that they could share with other children. Come to a child as a teach your friend the Blat Gemara, it's much. But you come to a child as a teach your friend the Pasuk. The student, the teacher can understand it well enough that she'll be able to communicate to somebody else. And this is at least, I'm not going to say this is the entire idea. This is at least one of the reasons that Rebbe made the Yud Beis Psukim and Marech Hazal. It's a fantastic idea. He's pashut giving children material. You give a child a mission, you have to give them the tools to carry out the mission. The mission is to be mashpia and other children. So the Rebbe is giving the children the tools to fulfill their mission by giving them the Yud Beis Psukim and Marech Hazal. I found this extraordinary. I really did. I found this extraordinary. Ad kan chazara. Everything I said until this point is a review from the previous class. Now, we're going to move on. We're going to be reading. I sent you a PDF. We're beginning on the bottom of page 116, Sif Yud Daled. I'm not reading contiguously. In other words, the Sikha we read last time, we stopped in the middle. The next part of that Sikha is the first 6 of the Yud Beis Psukim, which I'm going to be doing in a separate class. I went ahead now, towards the end of the Farbrengen. After the Rebbe introduced his vision, his why and his what and his how. Why is mipi edelim v'yenkim mitzadet te'ez l'man seiderecha l'hashbas evim misnakim. And the what is that children be mashpia and other children. And the how is the Yud Beis Psukim Marei Chazal. After he presented the whole idea, at the end of the Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke about action. And today's class is that part of the Sikha. And I prepared a lot of material to read in today's class. We'll see how much of it we cover. I numbered the paragraphs I want to read. If you download the PDF or you can see it on your phone, we're going to be skipping a little bit. We're learning certain parts. I'm skipping the parts of the Sikha that were about current events then. And we're learning the part of the Sikha that's timeless. But this Sikha is really the end of the Farbrengen, where the Rebbe said, okay, I gave you an idea, now let me tell you how I want you to do it. And the Rebbe gave very specific instructions about how he wanted the idea of the 12 Psukim and the translation of the 12 Psukim and making it available to the, quote, student teachers, the children teachers, to be able to teach to other children. There's a lot of details on how the Rebbe saw making this happen. So we begin on the bottom of page 116, Sif Yud Dalet, and I'm going to read inside. And I'm going to thank you again for being here. I want to thank you again for being here. I don't know what to say. Thank you. It's already been discussed so many times. The most important thing is the action. The main thing is what we do. As the Frierdiker Rebbe would say it. Every idea needs to have a bechein, a resolution. So what am I going to do with this? Okay, this is a wonderful philosophical idea. What am I going to do with it? The intent and the end and the point of everything we discussed is the following. Top of page 117. Not everybody has the skills to write and to explain in the language of every country, English, French, German, whatever it is, Portuguese, Spanish, Russian, Polish, I don't care what. Psukim, the passages of Torah and Chazal, which the Rebbe had already taught the first 6 of the 12 Psukim earlier in this Farbrengen, and the next 6 are going to be in Mitzvah Hashem in 2.5 weeks on Lag BaEmet. Or perhaps other Psukim, you don't like the ones I chose, you can choose different ones. But Bilvad, whatever Psukim and whatever Mamar Chazal you choose, that whatever you choose has to be explicable. It should reach the understanding and the grasp and the intellectual reach of young boys and girls. They should be able to understand it. And again, I want to re-emphasize that the Rebbe is saying it should be understood by children well enough they should be able to share this with other children. So to this end, people who have the skill, the wherewithal, the know-how, and the capability of framing these psukim and these Mamar Chazal in a language which is available to children, and available to children well enough for them to teach it to others. B'medinas in America, medinas in various countries, who are listening on the hookup to what's being discussed. Every single country in its own language should present these so far 6 and ultimately 12 psukim and Mamar Chazal. They should be readable, understandable, and communicatable to and by children. The Rebbe continues and he says, I prefer, don't provide one version, provide a variety of different forms. The word teichen means content and signan means language. Don't explain it in one way, explain it in 2 or 3 different ways. That the teacher or the student teacher should be able to choose which method will be the easiest to bring to each group of children based on time and place. Meaning, don't just give translations of the psukim and one commentary. Give translations of the psukim and a variety of commentaries, because every country has different culture. And the various cultures bring forward these ideas in different ways. So the Rebbe says, present the 12 psukim in more than one way. So that in Germany, a German child will understand how the Psukim are speaking to him based on German culture. And a French child, or a British child, or a Spanish child, or a South American child, or Central American child, or a Northern American child, or an Australian child, wherever the child, or a Israeli child, wherever that child lives, the culture of that child should come across in the way the Psukim are explained, so that it have an appeal to that particular child. So that ever saying, explain it in different ways, so different children in different places should respond to it as they're meant to. Then it should be distributed. It should be given to teachers and educators and people involved in chinuch. And then you have to encourage each teacher, whether they're Lubavitch or they're not Lubavitch, whether they're man or they're woman or they're child, to bring out of himself the potential that he has. It should be actualized in every teacher and every educator and every child teacher, to be able to find within themselves the skills they need to communicate it to others. And there is, you have to teach the children, and that makes 2 points. Point number 1, the person is going to say, why should I do it? Why is it my job? You should know, this is not personal. This is not your own personal choice. You're going to choose to do it, you're going to choose not to do it. It's not your choice. This is not about you as an individual, whether you're going to take on this project. You have to bear in mind what the Gemara says. Quote, everything Hashem created in His world has to have a purpose. Nothing is for waste. And just like nothing is for waste, nothing is allowed to be wasted. If Hashem gave a particular person strength and possibility to communicate these particular ideas in a way that'll reach children, if he doesn't use the skills the Eibishter gave him, or even if he does use them, even he does use his skills, but he doesn't do it to the maximum capability that he has. So you're saying to the person who's given this opportunity to teach 12 psukim, that if you don't use the skills that the Eibishter gave you, and the talents the Eibishter gave you, even if you use them, if you don't use them completely, so obviously that person is missing his own completion. He is, so to speak, disrupting the entire order the Eibishter created in His world. Nothing should be wasted. I prepared the Sikha more than once. I learned this paragraph and I'm laughing because our entire culture is about waste. The social denotation for this, what they call in history lessons and in social lessons, is called consumerism. We live in a society that throws things away on a regular basis. We waste everything. We waste. You buy a car, the car could still work, you buy your replacement car. You know that the Rebbe, I know this for a fact, I heard this from Rabbi Krinsky's children, the Rebbe would not allow himself to get a new car. And when the car broke down, they replaced the parts. He told me that they spent more money replacing the parts of the Rebbe's car than buying a new car. The Rebbe would not buy a new car. Now, of course, there's probably other considerations here as well. But the Rebbe was so against the whole idea of throwing things away and starting over. You have to use everything maximally. The Rebbe would save, people sent him letters. If the letter did not fill the whole page, he'd cut off the bottom and save it for scrap. A person has to maximize every ounce of himself. And I think about myself, the biggest thing we waste is not food, it's not clothing, it's not water, it's not air, it's time. It's time. Any day, a day has 24 hours, an hour has 60 minutes. So that's 24 times 60, I don't know what the number is, but it's hundreds and hundreds of minutes per day. Now eating is a requirement, and sleeping is a requirement, and drinking is a requirement, and even relaxing is a requirement. You look at a day, 24 hours, and you say how much of it was not Levatala and how much of it is Levatala, and it's upsetting. And the Rebbe says, you're disrupting the whole purpose of creation. This attitude of the Rebbe's, which is so, I guess technically it's very strict. Ideally, it's very exact, it's very precise, in my form, it's the theme of the Kuntres Hamayan, The Rebbe Rashab wrote an essay called Kuntres Hamayan. The Ketus of Mayan is about shtus, right? Shtus is translated by Rabbi Zalman Posner as folly, right? Folly is translated by Yossi Paltiel as idiocy, as stupidity. Now, why did I translate folly into stupidity and idiocy? Because when you say stupid and idiot, everybody knows exactly what you mean and exactly to whom you're speaking. You say folly. Folly sounds like another flavor of ice cream. I don't know what folly means. I understand why he uses that word, but the Kuntres Mayan revolves around the idea of being a fool. And the argument of Kuntres Mayan is, if you could do something more meaningful, and you choose to do something less meaningful, even if you do it well, it's a shtus. For example, if you are very musical or very gifted as an artist, but you're also very bright, you're also very intelligent, and you could study Torah, you could study Chassidus, you could publish works of Torah, and you choose to be a musician or a chazan or a singer, the Rebbe Rashab would classify that as shtus. He wouldn't say it's a choice. The Rebbe Rashab would say to you, as the Kuntres Mayan does in the first Maimer, there's a grade, a whole series of levels of skills. And if the greatest thing that you could do is cook food, be a chef. If the greatest thing you could do is produce wine, make wine. But if you could be a chef or you could produce music and you choose to be a chef of amazing music, it's considered a shtus because it's a lower expression of human capability. And the ultimate level of human capability is intelligence. And the ultimate level of intelligence is Torah. And the ultimate level of Torah is Pnimius HaTorah. And the Rebbe Rashab argues every person has to ask himself, am I maximizing myself? And otherwise, it's not it's wrong, it's stupid. No, it's not that I'm doing a sin. I'm underselling myself. I'm undervaluing and underutilizing myself. That entire essay, which is 30 Maimorim, that I'm making this point of, quote, don't be a fool. Don't choose a lesser way of life over a more meaningful way of life because a person needs to maximize himself, is an idea which the Rebbe then develops very, very, very comprehensively in every area. The Rebbe personally wouldn't waste a second of his time. Or, you know the joke, the secretary, the Rebbe used to use pencils and he would sharpen them. And he would use the pencils until you could barely hold it in your hand. You know, you have to beg the Rebbe to get a new pencil. Why? It still works. The Rebbe had a secretary. His name was Ramesh Leib Rushton. He was a big chassid and a big pikeach. So I heard this from one of my teachers that there was a time that the Rebbe was very depressed. He was in himself. In the 60s, the Rebbe went through a period where the Rebbe was not so happy. Doesn't matter why and what. I don't even know if we know why. So Ramesh Leib wanted to cheer the Rebbe up. He went to the Rebbe every single day, 6 days a week. And Motzei Shabbos probably for dictation. He wrote the Rebbe's letters in Hebrew and Yiddish. Went in every day to the Rebbe. So he walked into the Rebbe with a tiny pencil. It was mamish an inch and a half. And he's taking notes. And the Rebbe says to him, can't find a bigger pencil. So he pulled out one of those big massive pencils you get at a bazaar, you know. And the Rebbe laughed. He wanted to make the Rebbe laugh. But the Rebbe didn't waste anything. Not a moment in time, not a piece of paper, not a relationship. And the Rebbe is saying that to us. And he's saying it to us so reasonably that we can forget just how extremely, the right wording is how exacting that is. Exacting is not bad or mean, it's just a lot. A person has to be able to finish his day and say, I didn't waste a minute. That's awesome. A person has to be able to finish his day and say, I didn't learn something superficially that I could have learned more comprehensively because I was lazy, because that would be inefficient. So the Rebbe is saying, you're coming to a person, including a child, and saying, listen, you got the skill to teach another. If you fail to do it, you're messing the whole world up. Why? Because Hashem made the world for everything to be maximized, and when you unmaximize a piece of you, the whole of the creation becomes less maximized. And you think about that as a Western person, and you don't know if you should laugh or cry, because the truth is we're extremely far away from it. But it's a value. The truth is it's a value that if we would embrace, we'd be better people. The world would be a better place. It's not just a religious value. It's a human value. It's a social value. It's a decency value. It's a good value. Everybody knows that it's better not to waste than to waste. And yet we waste. And like I said before, more than anything else, we waste time. Here the Rebbe is speaking about wasting a skill. Hashem gave you a skill that you could teach, you could inspire. And you're going to say, nah, let somebody else do it. Or, yeah, I'll do it, but I'll do it with a half a heart. The Rebbe says, it's inefficient. It's wasteful. And wastefulness, to quote the Rebbe's words, it's disrupting the order of the whole world. At the Eibush that made a world, nothing should be inefficient or wasted. Because I'm wasting my skill, I'm not utilizing it, it's wasteful. Because you're failing to fulfill your shlichus in this world. And what's my shlichus? My shlichus is anything I could do. What's my shlichus? Of all the many things I could do, those things that are most specific to me, those things that are the deepest and the hardest, that's my shlichus. And if I fail to utilize myself maximally, I'm, quote, mevalbel chas v'sholem es aseh deshakava HaKadosh Baruch Hu be'elam. She'eini imal shlichusei be'elam, one is failing to fulfill shlichus in this world, by not using this faculty and this possibility. I want you to know that there's a tape, it's actually an audio tape. The Rebbe was visited by the Gerer Rebbe, Reb Simcha Bunim, the Leif Simcha, who was such a good friend of the Rebbe's. Really, the Lubavitcher Chassidim have such a debt to him. His Mesiras Nefesh for the Rebbe's covet is beyond, really, be'emes. He visited the Rebbe many times before he was Rebbe, when his brother was the Rebbe, the Beis Yisrael. But as a Rebbe, he was in America just once, in 1977, Tafshin Lamed Zayin, when he first became a Rebbe, and he had a Yechidus. There's a tape of it. It's a very interesting exchange. Fascinating meeting. He was almost affectionate to the Rebbe. He was very warm. And the Rebbe was very, very action focused. He was speaking to him about real issues. And the issue, if I'm not mistaken, was Shleimus Haaretz, not exchanging land for pieces of paper, as the Rebbe would call it over the years. And the Rebbe told him that in Halacha there's a criteria called Dvarim B'Teilim. Dvarim B'Teilim means idle words. Dvarim B'Teilim is Asin, I'll speak Dvarim B'Teilim. If a person speaks about something and nothing comes of it, so when nobody else does what they spoke of, they're Machshil, the speaker in Dvarim B'Teilim. You spoke about an issue because you think it's important, you think it's real, you think it's necessary for you to engage with. If nobody takes it and runs with it, those others who are not doing what you're suggesting that they should do make you someone who's speaking. So he told this to the Gerer Rebbe, that because nobody is taking him seriously, he is nichshel in Dvarim B'Teilim. And the Gerer Rebbe had a hard time swallowing the idea that the Rebbe is over on Dvarim B'Teilim. So he told the Rebbe, "But the Rebbe is not shaykh. But the Rebbe is not possible." But the Rebbe, it's such an interesting exchange. He came to see the Rebbe, and I don't think he had an agenda other than to see the Rebbe. If you listen to the tape, he's, like I said, he's almost affectionate, and the Rebbe is so focused on what has to get done, you know. so the Rebbe is talking apples and he's talking oranges. The Rebbe is talking about have to make this done, and the Rebbe said, "The Rebbe, I love you. You're the Rebbe," you know. And the way I hear the tape, I've listened to it a few times. They're talking to each other, but the things that are bothering the Rebbe are not bothering the Rebbe, not because he doesn't care about them, but because he's there to be near the Rebbe. That's enough, you know, not to talk about a particular practical question. And he tells the Rebbe, Rebbe, it's impossible to say by the Rebbe, Dvarim B'Teilim. And he says, yes it is. Yes it is. Why? Because it's got to happen. It's a very, if you listen to that tape, it's very short, maybe 5 minutes, but it's just the way they're interacting. It's fascinating because they're, like I said, they're in a way on two different pages. The Gerer Rebbe is just happy to be with the Rebbe. He asks to say l'chaim, he asks to make a bracha, which he does. And of course the Rebbe does not make a bracha with him. He makes the bracha himself. He says l'chaim by himself. The whole meeting is beautiful. But the Gerer Rebbe had one agenda and the Rebbe had another agenda. The Gerer Rebbe then was to meet the Rebbe. The Rebbe then was to talk about something that needs to get done, you know. Otherwise it's mevalbel chas v'sholem es aseh deshakava. So you come to a child and say to a child and say, don't say this doesn't mean me, because if it doesn't mean you, it's mevalbel chas v'sholem as a say that HaKadosh. This is number one. And then there's number two. Next paragraph, number 18. And number two is it can't wait till tomorrow. In addition to the fact that every person who can must involve himself in this undertaking, there is another thing. There is no notion of waiting till tomorrow or the day after. Each day is supposed to be so full that you can't say today what I'm going to do tomorrow. I have to use today for today. And if I can't do something today, I can't say I'll leave it for tomorrow. Tomorrow I have other obligations. What I'll do tomorrow, you wish that tomorrow you'll be able to get done everything that was meant to get done tomorrow. If you failed to use today for something that was meant to be done today, there's not going to be time tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to be full of tomorrow's activities. So these are two things. You're talking to a child. Number one, if you have the talent, it must be you. Number two, it's got to be now. Both of these arguments about not wasting your skills and not wasting your time would be true. Would be true even if it was for you alone. If you could do something for yourself today, you're not allowed to not do it, and you're not allowed to push it off for tomorrow. But in this case, the issue that we are currently addressing is not about you personally, but your ability to influence another, even if you're a child influencing another child. If one day passes that other child doesn't get the chinuch that it was meant to get, that other child is going to be missing something. It may even be that they'll be lacking very core ideas, very important ideas, very deep ideas, very fundamental ideas. So the Rebbe says you have to do it, and you have to do it today, especially since it's involving somebody else. And the Rebbe now goes back to the actionable side. What I just said is the translation of my initiative, says the Rebbe, of children teaching other children and adults teaching children to teach children. What will ultimately be the 12 psukim and Memorei Chazal. It's correct and good. It's incredibly important. They should immediately collect as such people who have the skill to write this up in a way that's educational and instructive and beneficial, and bring it to the children. And I mentioned this to you yesterday, last class, Thursday, that somebody told me that there's indications from the Rebbe that this campaign, the Rebbe would later say, is the spiritual protection of the story of Entebbe, which happened that summer, Yud B'Is Tammuz time. In other words, the Rebbe is making a mitzvah, and he's saying himself that he needs children's shmita for we don't know what. And there are people who say, and I don't know how clear it is in the Rebbe's own words, I don't see it so clearly, but people are saying that when the incredible miracle of Entebbe occurred, the Rebbe attributed it, at least in a veiled way, to the fact that the children undertook to learn the Yud Beis Psukim, Memorei Chazal, which the Rebbe is talking about here. So in other words, these ideas, when the Rebbe introduces a mitzvah, he means what he says. And he means it as an educational tool. But the timing sometimes has layers that are exceedingly important. So the Rebbe says, when it comes to matters of holiness, you have to go back to the introduction to the Tanya, where the Alter Rebbe says, don't get humble on me. Don't get humble. When it comes to helping a fellow Jew, when it comes to anything like the Yiddishkeit, what we call in our culture the shin von drei keplach, the shin with the three heads, shiflus shel sheker, false humility. There shouldn't be humility and false lowliness. Who am I to do it? The Rebbe says, nonsense. It's a practical thing, it's an actual thing. Now is not the time for humility. Alter Rebbe wrote introduction to the foundational work of all of Chassidus, that if there's something that good needs to get done, don't get humble. Not now, tomorrow. I was thinking about this and I was reading this, that Rabbi Reichik from Los Angeles was a humble man like you never saw. He would walk into a room, any place, and go up and sit on the dais. He did it in LA all the years. He did it in New York. Wherever he went, he would sit on the dais. Why? The Rebbe told him, wherever you go, you sit in Mizrach. So he sat in Mizrach. He took up no room, but he sat on the dais. Why? This was his mission. Don't be humble. You belong on the top. First of all, do what you need to do. Somebody else will then say critique of the work you did. Is it adequate? Is it sufficient? Perhaps your work needs to be improved or to be made better, but not to say I'm not the guy for it. That's Shifla Shel Sheker, and the Alter Rebbe wrote in the introduction to the foundational book of Chassidus that when it comes to good actions, there's no room for false humility. There's no such thing as a person who can't do anything. You do what you must. You do what you're able, and let other people fix your work. But don't sit in the side and say, I'm not the guy for it. Turn to page 118. And eventually, the material is going to be prepared and translated and presented using, like the Rebbe said before, different ways of enlightening each one of these passages, so that different children in different parts of the world with different cultural backgrounds should relate to them. Each one will find. Each one can find Yoladim Bishonim, biological children, or Yoladim Biyadiyas, or intellectual children, with children who are grown up biologically, but they're spiritually like children. V'yesef bechinuch shalhem, you should increase in their chinuch. Hachel, beginning with chinuch atzmei, first educate yourself. Pi kama v'kama, many times over. Ad la'ofen shel diluk ukfitza, to the extent that you're jumping over, meaning get involved in preparing the material, and then got involved in teaching the material, first of all yourself, and then to others in a way that makes you grow. And constantly look for how this can be made better. To find ways of improving any effort, you're not going to have to work very hard. Every person knows about himself how many things we can and must improve in our own lives, and in this particular initiative, how much we can and must improve in us doing this initiative. And arguably, he also judges his friend. And the other guy also maybe could be doing it a little bit better. And then the Rebbe speaks about himself. He laughs and he says, he begins with myself. And just like I know about myself that I find what I can be better in, the Rebbe says, and I can find what other people can be better in. I'm assuming others are in the same position. It's not going to take a lot of time to find, number one, how I can better myself, and number two, how can I can contribute to bettering somebody else. And I wish miyad, that what happens initially, in other words, from the very beginning, it should be done to the maximum capability of the people involved in this undertaking. And then, after each one will give maximally what he could give, you'll have what it says in the Medrash, each one who has 100 wants 200, who has 200 others, you'll always want more. So you'll do it to the maximum capability from the outset, and then you'll say, I want more still. And it will end with the Mullah orders there, so the whole world will be filled with knowledge of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Rebbe is saying everyone's got to get involved, they need to get involved now, and they need to do it to the best of their abilities, and then grow in this. And now the Rebbe moves on to the children and the psukim, and he says, every month the moon goes away and a new moon replaces it. It's the same physical moon, but it's a renewed moon. And we know about a Yidna compared to the moon, that like the moon we renew every month. Each Jew, each person has room for renewal and for increase on a monthly basis. It's correct to affect in yourself, as well as with the children. Every month, you should add in your army of Hashem that you're rearing at least one child. Yeled Bishan be a child in years, or Yeled be a dias, or a child in knowledge. Now you must understand, Tzivas Hashem was not made for another 4.5 years. The idea of the army of Hashem was introduced Sukkot of 1980, Tav Shin Mamav. This is 1976. And the Rebbe is using the expression Tzivas Hashem as if it's already a fait accompli. That you have to add in the Tzivas Hashem at least once a month, have at least one more child, or one more child in knowledge who you are inspiring with these messages that are coming forward from the 12 Psukim and Memorei Chazal. In addition to adding more children, there should be more passages. or Inyan Betanya, which is Teres HaChasidus, which is Gil Primus B'Deidei. That just like you have to add in more children each month, you want to add more psukim, more Chazal, and more passages of the Tanya. Now, in this regard, the Rebbe did not do this. The Rebbe do 6, and then 18 days later do 6 more, and they became the, what do they call it? The Rosetta Stone. They represent the whole Torah in 12 passages. But the Rebbe says, add more kids, add more psukim. Each month we should each make an effort. There should be one more the Torah. We should know it by heart. So that we can engage with it as we walk in the street, when we're laying down, when we're standing up in the morning. We should have Torah in our memory. Now, of course, what the Rebbe is saying is, I'm introducing 12 psukim, and I'm introducing it because I want it to be a tool for chinuch. And very specifically, I want it to be a tool for children, to share it with other children. But the message is beyond this specific framework. There's also the message of growing. And in the message of growing, just like these 12 passages, we want everybody to memorize by heart. Every month there should be another passage we can memorize by heart. There's no reason why not. In other words, even if they're not going to be included in the 12 passages of Teresh B'Ksava and Teresh Rapeh and Tanya, and the Rebbe is introducing, but in terms of our increasing the number of passages of Torah we know by heart, for us it'll be an increase. And he brings the Likutei Torah in Pashas Kadesh that we all know. Especially, this is right after Pesach. And the Kriyas HaTorah that week was Kadesh. And in Pashas Kadeshim you have the Pasuk V'adat Pnei Zaken. And V'adat is a tiny little maimer of why you have to have respect for Talmidei Chachamim. That Rabbi Seinu Nisyenu Efliu Mailas Maimer Zeh Kinvu B'Kama Sichas. This tiny little maimer was discussed and celebrated by the Rabbeim enormously. I want you to know, my Shver passed away Pashas Kadeshim. He died on a Monday night. That afternoon, Monday, I sat down to learn him the V'adat Pnei Zaken, and he knew it by heart. He said it off Moshe Veinik. It was a maimer from the Rebbe, Tafshel Chafei, based on the Likutei Torah. And I was reading it inside, and he was saying it by heart. It was the day he died. He was not exactly in good health. You understand yourself. The Rabbeim said, the Rebbe has a question. Why do you have to have derech eretz for a Talmid Chacham? If a person is learning Torah, as he's learning Torah, you're respecting him because of what he's doing. But if a Talmid Chacham is walking in the street, the Talmid Chacham is eating breakfast, why do you have to respect him now? He's not learning Torah. And the answer that the Alter Rebbe gave is because there's always Torah in his Moyach HaZikaron. His memory didn't lose the Torah. So wherever he goes and whatever he's doing, the Torah that's in his memory is there. And it explains why you have to give cover to a Talmid Chacham even when he's not learning Torah, because he's always learning Torah. If he's not learning Torah consciously, it's in his Zikaron, it's his memory, which is why the Alter Rebbe says it's very important to memorize Torah by heart, because then even when you're not learning, you're a Torah person, because the Torah you have in your memory. So the Rebbe says, I'm giving you 12 psukim, Marei Chazal, you add more to know them in your Moyach HaZikaron, to know them in your memory, so that no matter what you're doing in your level of Chochmah, in your level of memory, there's always Torah. When you know something by heart, and you're not thinking about that idea, you think about something else, in the brain connected to memory, that idea is present. And because in the brain connected to memory, that idea is present, you have to honor that person even though he's doing another activity altogether. And he concludes, and I hope that also in the idea of adding more passages, not just the 12 that the Rebbe is going to introduce. As much as you have, you want to have more. And of course also the competitive aspect. If the first month comes and you choose which new passage you're going to learn of the 12 passages or beyond the 12 passages, and you'll see it wasn't that hard to find somebody else to teach, or inyan echad b'teresh b'ksav, b'teresh b'apeh, or b'teresh chassidus, or an additional passage from Mikra, Mishnah, or Chassidus that you're going to memorize. And when you'll realize that it's not that difficult, then the next month you won't just do as well as you did the month before, you'll do more, twice as much, and 4 times as much, in a way of Mailam Bakedesh, Afilu Lagabi Ilish Lifniza, Beifan Shadil Kfitza, higher and higher and more and more. So the Rebbe's message is, number one, experts need to do this. Number two, they should create a variety of different forms that it should have as broad an appeal as possible. And number three, don't shy away. Everybody's obligated. Do what you can. Let others criticize you. Let's make the work better and better. And number four, let's grow. Let's grow in the number of children. Let's grow in the number of passages. Now, I'm now I'm skipping page 119. I'm going to page 120. And we've read what the Rebbe wanted, okay? The Rebbe wanted action. That the Yud Beis Psukim should be prepared and enlightened, explained in a way that should have an appeal to many different types of children, children of years and children of knowledge, and there should be constant growth and enhancement of all of this. And now he goes back, not to the what, but to the why. Remember, how did we start? The Rebbe said that he's making this campaign because of the power of little children. Little children have a special koyach. The word oiz means fortification. It means protection. It means boldness. And children's hevel she'ein bechet, the air that comes from the mouths of children, which is innocent, has a strength, has a boldness to defeat all kinds of enemies. And this is why the Rebbe made this campaign. And then, of course, the campaign was that children should teach other children and all the other things we discussed. So on page 120 by Sifrit Ches, the Rebbe goes back to this, and he does a play on words. And this is interesting to me. You know, in Hebrew, one word has many meanings. In English, one meaning has many words to represent it. It's just one of those things. But old languages like Arabic, like Greek, like Hebrew, there's not that many words, but words are very colorful. Modern languages, the words are very, very, very dry and very separated. So the word oiz means fortification, like a fortress, like a castle is a mo'oiz. Like mo'oiz tzur, mo'oiz means a fortress. But oiz also means chutzpah, it means a boldness. And the Rebbe wants to tie these two ideas together. The idea that the Jewish people need oiz, they need a fortification. The Jewish people need oiz, they need a fortification. And that the fortification is children's learning Torah. But there is also the concept of chutzpah. Oiz from the word boldness. He plays on the word. From little children comes protection. And from little children comes the correct kind of boldness and chutzpah. Let's read it. Let's go back to the very beginning. Before I introduced the campaign, the Rebbe said, I spoke about why I want children involved. Because children are pure, and their words have a holiness, and Hashem hears them. And then I went into the campaign of what I wanted children to do. Let's go back to the very first idea, which the Rebbe had spoke, which the Frierdiker Rebbe spoke about in 1927, and the Rebbe spoke about before the Yom Kippur War, and now it's 2.5 years later, and the Rebbe is revisiting it. Shekein al pi psak HaGemara, the Gemara says, B'nai Yisrael mitzad atzmahim azam b'umis. The Jewish people in and of themselves are the most bold and chutzpahdik of all the nations. The Rebbe brings in the Sichos that because of Yiddishkeit, we become bashful, we become with shame. But our basic nature, before the Torah softens us, is that we're chutzpahniks. It says in Medrash, even non-Jews know that Hashem oiz la'amayit, and Hashem has given the Jewish people oiz. Now, oiz means a fortification, and oiz also means a boldness. The Jewish people's protection is Torah. When Jews hold on to the Torah, Hashem oiz la'amayit, and Hashem gives Jewish people the boldness, kipshute. And as a result, Hashem they have peace. When Yidden act the way a Jew is supposed to act and respects himself, and doesn't bend to the pressures of the world who say all kinds of silly things about the Jewish people are trying to do to protect themselves. That's the basis. The oiz, the Yiddish chutzpah, is the basis for the Yiddish shalom. As the Gemara says, when this is a Gemara in Masechtas Zvachim, which I never learned, unfortunately, that when the Yidden have the chutzpah that they need, then you have shalom in the world. And the Jewish people were to go to Eretz Yisrael, which is their land, Eretz Teiber Achav, the good and broad land. He will come and he will redeem us and he will take us standing upright. That even before Mashiach comes, we already have this self-respect, this standing upright, and we should go to Eretz HaKadosh, the land which Hashem watches over every day. This idea that Hashem watches over Israel was true in the times of Golus, and it's certainly going to be true after Mashiach comes. And especially when you will hold on to the connection between the Jewish people, beginning with little children and their fortification, their chutzpah, with Yiddishkeit, a Jew and Judaism, learning Torah and doing mitzvahs every single day. And then all of life becomes pleasant, and peaceful, which is the ways of the Torah. Then there's an eternal joy in the world. In the last moments of the Golus. And we realize the prophecy that in Eretz Yisrael there's going to be peace. In the last moments of Golus, even in Golus we have peace. Wherever we live, it's outside of Eretz Yisrael. Certainly in Eretz Yisrael. There should be light as we understand it philosophically. And light as we understand it literally. Beginning with Teda, which is called light, like it says in the, and then Simcha and Sassan and Nikon. And he concludes, the shepherd to all of us, in this real world, in our time, in our frame of time. You go from the Gula of Yitzias Messiah to the Gula of Mashiach. For that identifies Hashem shows us wonders. Okay, that's the end of this class and the end of this Sikha. And the Rebbe finishes the Farbrengen by talking about giving dollars. I included that in the PDF which I posted, but I'm not going to read it. The Nekuda is, in the first class, the Rebbe said what he wants. In the second class, the Rebbe retranslates how he wants it done. So it's 50 years on, we got to do it. And part of the lesson is a person shouldn't waste anything of himself, otherwise he's being available the whole state of the creation. And I thank you for joining me. I may give a class tomorrow morning, but it'll probably be Yom Tov by you, something like 8 o'clock in the morning. I may, if I'm ready, I'll do the first part of the Maimer. The Maimer I'm going to be doing is Ulakachta V'chem B'Yom Rishon. It's a long Maimer, it's 10 pages. Oh, I learned it so long ago that I have to relearn it. So if I don't have a chance, I will not give a class tomorrow morning. If I do have a chance, I will give a class tomorrow morning, okay? So we have to wait and see. It's 8 pages long, actually. 8 plus a little bit. Okay, thank you so much for being there. And Yesem Masha Para, Yesem Egel, Egesbar. Yeah, regards to your husband. A gute Nacht. A guten Moed.